There's no automated way built into Revit to have it display future work. The phase conditions that we have are existing and new construction, demolition, and temporary, but nothing for showing what happens beyond our current scope of work. Now, since a lot of projects do master planning and may map out future phases that are not part of the current scope of work, this would leave us with somewhat of a limitation in trying to use the phasing feature in Revit. Well, while there's no built-in way to do future work, I do have a few techniques that I'd like to share with you that you can use to try and essentially trick Revit into showing it the future. So I'm in a file here called Future Work, and I'm in a floor plan called Level 1 Future. Now, if you look at my project browser, you'll notice that Level 1 Future is actually grouped under the new Phase 2 phase. So at the moment, even though its name is Future, it's not actually assigned to a future phase. Now, I do have a future phase in here. Let's take a look. Let's go to the Manage tab. Let's go to Phases. And you can see that I've created a phase at the end called Future Work, not in contract, and we just need to assign that to this view in the background in order to make it appear in the correct location here in the project browser. But before we do that, I want to point out where the real crux of this technique is going to come in. If we go to the phase filters and we take a look at all the existing phase filters, it occurred to me that over here in the new column, none of the phase filters ever use the override option for new. You may recall that there are 3 options here: by category, overridden, and not displayed. But if you look, they all use either by category or not displayed when it comes to new. So if we co-opt the new graphic override, and even though it's called new, we use it for the future, then in some cases this technique can actually work for us. So what I've done is I've just sort of overridden the graphics here, made it a gray line and a crosshatch blue hatching. You can choose whatever graphics you prefer for your own office standards. So you can set all that up. And then when you come over here to the phase filters, you just want to add a new filter, give it a name, and then make sure that instead of by category or not displayed, it chooses overridden for anything that's considered new in that phase. I'm going to do the same for existing, and then I'm going to hide any demolition. Let's click OK. And now let's take this view, make sure nothing is selected. So you're seeing floor plan up here. Scroll down, and instead of new phase 2, I'm going to choose future work. That's the phase, and then also my new future work phase filter. When I apply both of those things, you're going to see a new addition appear here at the top, and it's using the graphics that I designated in the phasing dialog. Now, this solution will work in cases where you have a single future work phase at the end of all your other phases. It will also work if you don't have any situations where you need to use the Show Complete phase filter. If I go to Show Complete, it actually shows the completed project at the end of all the phases, and you can see that everything is displayed in the same uniform graphics. That's not really going to work here because we would still want the future stuff to be overridden. So unfortunately, Show Complete doesn't work in this case, so you'd have to build your own custom phase filter. But otherwise, if there's only one future phase, this could be a viable technique. If you're working on a master plan for a large hospital complex or a campus design or something like that, and there's actually not only multiple phases, but potentially multiple future work phases in that master plan. So we have an overall phase 1, and then there's going to be different stages in there, and you need to show future at different points in time. This technique won't work. But you could look at possibly using design options as an alternative. So let me show you an alternative to what we just did here as another way that you can kind of set up a future work. And what we'll be doing is we'll be just making a design option to show the future work. So let me go to the design options here. And I'm going to create a new option set, rename it. Now, I'm going to create 2 options. One of these options is going to be the current contract, and the other option is going to be the future work. You want to make sure that the primary option is your current contract, because if you recall, the primary option automatically displays in all views. So you don't want to have to go to all your views and apply overrides just to show your current contract. So I'm going to rename option 1 and call this current contract. And then option 2 will be my future work. And that's not primary. I'm going to close that. And now all I need to do is select all of this geometry. And I'm going to just select it in plan here, but there's actually a roof and some other elements that we would need to select in 3D, but you'll get the general idea here. So I'm just going to select the stuff here in plan and go to my Add to Set command for design options. And I want to make sure that I'm only adding this to the future work. I don't want to add it to the current contract. So when I click OK, you're going to see all of that disappear. Because if you go to the visibility graphics for this view, VG, and you look under design options, the future expansion option set is set to automatic. And as we just saw in design options, we made our primary design option the current contract. So when it automatically displays, it will hide anything that's the future work. The nice thing about this technique is that instead of just a future expansion option set, you could actually have multiple future expansion option sets. You could have future expansion for the main wing of the hospital and future expansion for the parking complex and so on, and set up each of those and then create custom views that mixed and matched and showed different parts and pieces of those options. You will have to control the graphics separately. You won't be able to rely on phasing per se to do that in those cases, but you can use display filters or any other techniques in Revit in order to properly display those future phases. So Revit doesn't have a built-in future work tool. I kind of hope that they add one in the future. But in the meantime, you can look at using one of the two techniques that we've talked about here. And as I said, what appealed to me about showcasing these two for you is I think it's a nice way to tie together the phasing and the design options that we've been talking about throughout this course.